Hey, ioStux here, #1 private Overwatch coach over on ioStux.com and former head coach for organizations such as NYXL and the Boston Uprising. One of Overwatch 2's newest additions, Kiriko, is not only one of the most high skill cap supports we've gotten in a long time, when mastered, she also has the potential to single-handedly carry games. Today, I'd like to use my 6 years of professional coaching experience to cover everything you need to know to start developing good habits on Kiriko and eventually master her kit fully. This video is structured into multiple chapters. First, I want to talk about the best times to pick Kiriko. After that, I'll go through each ability and share how they are best used. Next, we'll talk about her ultimate, her primary win conditions, as well as how to position as Kiriko to enable those win conditions. Finally, I'll rate Kiriko's difficulty in a wide variety of categories so you know whether she's a good fit for you. When to pick Kiriko. Kiriko is an aggressive flex support. She is a mixture of Zenyatta's offensive capabilities, Baptiste's defensive skills, as well as Moira's tempo plays. What she lacks in healing output, she makes up for in an incredibly strong ultimate and valuable utility. So, when should we pick her? Kiriko struggles with healing output, which means that pairing her with low throughput supports like Lucio or Zenyatta can be dangerous in solo queue if the rest of your team lacks self-sustain. Her ultimate is an incredibly strong tempo play, not too dissimilar from Baptiste's Window or Moira's Coalescence, so Kiriko is an aggressive pick that fits best with team compositions that support a proactive, brawly playstyle. Due to the nature of her close-range kit and her ultimate, Kiriko should be paired with a team composition that sticks together and doesn't move around too much. When picking Kiriko in a dive comp, you'll have a difficult time getting value out of your ultimate because your team will quickly dive out of it. With a more stationary composition, consisting of characters like Cassidy, Ashe, Soldier, or Hanzo, however, you'll have a better time, as they can take advantage of your ultimate. On top of that, your protection Suzu has a very small range, which means that a stacked team composition gets more value out of it. Keep in mind that Kiriko fulfills very different roles in high-level scrims compared to solo queue. In solo queue, you want to play Kiriko in long-range grouped compositions and avoid picking her in compositions that play split or have too much mobility, while also keeping in mind that your team will not have access to as much healing as with another support. If you are thinking about playing Kiriko in a more coordinated environment, however, pairing her with a character like Lucio can be amazing, because his kit, especially a speed boost, synergize extremely well with the proactive nature of her ult. Here, you can see an example of a good Kiriko team comp for solo queue. Reinhardt allows us to close in on the enemies. Ana has enough healing throughput to keep our team alive, while her nade and nano boost synergize with her ult. And both Soldier and Ashe can play from range, squeezing every last drop of value out of her ultimate. And here's an example of a composition where you're better off picking a different support. Our dive core wouldn't get a lot of value out of our ultimate, and Zenyatta would be vulnerable in the back on his own. On top of that, your team would struggle with healing, especially against more spammy compositions. Keep in mind that while it is tempting to play Kiriko as a flanker, moving along another flanker, such as Genji or Tracer, isn't a viable playstyle in solo queue. Your DPS players will be too predictable and unreliable to center your playstyle around. Although this playstyle might see use in pre-made stacks or coordinated play, it's not recommended for solo queue players to flank as Kiriko. In terms of map picks, Kiriko does very well in situations where you have to push through chokes. Retaking the point in King of the Hill or capturing the first point on hybrid maps are situations where her ultimate especially is incredibly valuable. Playing her in defensive situations is also very strong, although using her ultimate becomes a bit more complex and requires significant amounts of game sense and experience. How to use her primary and secondary fire. Kiriko's healing Ofuda, her primary fire, is a relatively low throughput heal with auto-aim. If they are yellow, they have locked onto a teammate and will follow them until the heal goes through. If they are blue, it means they'll just fly straight ahead until they hit a friendly player or a wall. The auto-aim is fairly generous, so healing people is not as mechanically difficult as with a character like Ana. Because of its fairly low throughput, it doesn't generate a significant portion of ult charge. Keep in mind that with Overwatch 2 being 5v5, one of the biggest changes supports will have to adjust to is that there is significantly less healing to be done. There's one less person dealing damage on the enemy team, and one less person taking damage on your team. This means that supports can no longer solely rely on healing to get their ultimate within a reasonable time. Her kunais, the secondary fire, is the part of her kit that differentiates good Kirikos from less experienced ones. Her kunais have a very low travel speed, making them incredibly difficult to hit from a distance, and more importantly, they deal a very low base damage of 40, but have a 3 times headshot multiplier, meaning that each headshot deals a whopping 120 damage. This means that killing a squishy with 200 HP, such as Ana, takes 5 body shots if they get no healing. 2 headshots, on the other hand, will take her down, even if she's getting healing in between shots. Combined with the fact that healing is not as reliable a source of ult charge anymore, landing headshots with her kunais is going to be crucial to getting her ultimate as quickly as possible. I'll cover this in more detail in later sections of the guide, but for now, one of the key things to understand about Kiriko is that consistently farming headshots with her kunais is going to be the most important skill you can have as Kiriko. How to use her first ability, Swift Step. Kiriko's first ability is Swift Step, an instant 30-meter range teleport on a short 7-second cooldown. One of the biggest misconceptions about this ability is that it should be used to teleport to low HP teammates when you are out of range to heal them. This is unfortunately completely incorrect. Swift Step is comparable to Moira's Fade ability, and arguably the second strongest oh shit button in the game, right behind Fade. Kiriko's kunais make her a very short-range character who needs to get as close as possible to the enemy team to farm headshot ult charge. Playing this far forward and utilizing all the space that your tank creates is risky, however, which is what Swift Step is designed for. It's not a tool to teleport to your frontline to heal them. It's a tool that allows you to default to positioning with your frontline, and then Swift Step out to your backline when things get heated up front. In the same vein that Moira wants to play close to her tanks and use Fade to stay alive, Kiriko wants to also play close to her tanks and use Swift Step to get back to safety. The main advantage of Swift Step is that it can go through walls. The downside, compared to Fade of course, is that we need to do a 180-degree turn and look at our backline to teleport to them. Implementing 180-degree turn practice into your warm-up routine makes a lot of sense if you plan on playing Kiriko regularly. The biggest mistake you can make with this ability is using it to teleport into forward, aggressive positions. If you play in the back with your other support, see that your tank is getting critical, and Swift Step to him to heal, you put yourself into an extremely unstable position with no way to get out. Your healing output isn't high enough to stabilize your frontline, meaning that after you teleport, your tank will most likely give up space to recover resources, leaving you woefully overextended, ready to get punished by the enemy team. If you ever feel the need to teleport to the frontline as Kiriko, you were out of position to begin with. How to use her second ability, Protection Suzu. After years of Ana's Biotic Grenade holding the title of the strongest single ability in the game with its game-winning heal denial effect, Kiriko's Protection Suzu is coming in hot to take that crown. With a hefty 14-second cooldown, this ability heals teammates in a small radius for 50 health, grants them temporary invulnerability for 0.75 seconds, and most importantly, cleanses almost every debuff present in the game. Earthshatter, EMP, Anti-Nade, and Sleep. These abilities have carried fights for years at this point, but with Protection Suzu, Kiriko players have an incredibly strong tool in their kit to counteract these harmful effects. That said, Protection Suzu is a projectile, meaning it can be denied by abilities such as D.Va's Defense Matrix, and more importantly, it has travel time. This further promotes her aggressive positioning. Who is most likely to need the beneficial effects of Protection Suzu? The Mercy, standing all the way in the back, hiding behind a wall? Or your tank, standing right in front of the enemy team, tanking all the hits? The further forward someone plays, the more space they contest, and the more pressure they'll be under. They are more likely to get shattered, hacked, or naded, and as such, you want to prioritize readying yourself to protection Suzu them as soon as a negative effect hits them. Your backline getting hacked or naded won't immediately lose you the fight, but a Reinhardt getting naded? That's a death sentence. You don't want to risk standing in the back and your protection Suzu not reaching your frontliner in time to save them. Positioning closer to your frontline allows you to use the ability more reactively, denying the enemy team opportunities to make your tank vulnerable. Another important thing to note is that protection Suzu works very well with Swift Step. If you just took a big hit, quickly flicking to the ground and throwing down your protection Suzu to give you that short window of invulnerability to find someone to Swift Step to can save you quite often. If you stand close to your frontline, you might also deal some collateral healing or even cleanse a debuff from them unintentionally, which is a nice bonus. Incurring the 14-second cooldown because you Suzu'd yourself, TM, before Swift Stepping also isn't a big deal, since most of that cooldown will have passed by the time you make it back to your frontline. Protection Suzu is also one of the reasons why she prefers teams to be not too spread out. You need to have a careful balance. The more stacked your team is, the more value you'll get out of Protection Suzu and her ultimate. But if your team is too stacked, your mobility is severely hindered since you won't have anyone to Swift Step to. Needless to say, in spite of its healing effect, unless you benefit from the temporary invulnerability or debuff cleanse, don't use it. The healing on its own is simply not worth putting it on its long 14-second cooldown. How to use her ultimate, Kitsune Rush. What an ability! Kitsune Rush is one of the strongest ultimates in the game and can single-handedly win teamfights. It's superior to Baptiste's window in almost every way. It places down a rectangular area in front of you that lasts for 10 seconds and grants multiple beneficial effects to allies standing within it. Let's cover its effect and how to best utilize them. First off, the ability grants allies stood within it 50% movement speed. While this effect is an excellent gap closer in certain situations, allowing you to run over the enemy team, Lucio's speed boost is just way more dynamic, and you risk your team simply running out of it. The main benefit of this movement speed buff is that it makes your teammates and yourself incredibly hard to hit. Hitting a strafing target in Overwatch is already ridiculously difficult, especially now that DPS characters get a movement speed increase upon scoring an elimination. But when they do all of that 50% faster, landing shots becomes a game of chance, giving Kitsune Rush a strong defensive component. Next, it increases the rate of fire and reduces the reload time of characters stood within it. This works with almost every character, including Zarya's Beam, Winston's Zapping, Hanzo's Storm Arrow, and Roadhog's Ultimate. This is a massive DPS increase, which allows your team to gain significant amounts of ult charge, as well and break through shields incredibly quickly. Which means that an enemy team might feel safe, thinking they have the advantage, only for you to use Kitsune Rush and completely swing the tempo of the fight. Lastly, it gives players stood within it a massive 60% increase in cooldown regeneration. The exact math on how this affects the total cooldown time is a bit unintuitive, but all you need to know is that abilities affected by it have incredibly short cooldowns. Soldiers spamming helix rockets every couple seconds, or Ana throwing her nades 3 times during a fight instead of once, makes a very big difference. Keep in mind that it's a bit picky with which abilities it works with, at least in the beta. For more details on all its inconsistencies, check out the Overwatch wiki for the most up-to-date information. So, when do we want to use Kitsune Rush? Her ultimate is a pure tempo play, meaning it can decide who has the upper hand in a given fight. You want to use it in situations where you want to encourage your team to engage, or to sour an enemy engage. If you see that the enemy tank got anti-naded, for example, you could use Kitsune Rush to start an aggressive push with your team, overwhelming the enemy frontline and taking control of the objective. Or maybe the enemy Doomfist got nano boosted and jumps into your team. Using your ultimate can help your team blow him to pieces before he can do any significant damage. The most difficult aspect of playing Kiriko, next to farming her ultimate with her kunais, is placing her ultimate, however. While its size is nothing to scoff at, it shares the same problems that Baptiste's amplification matrix has. If you place it too far forward, you risk the enemy team simply pushing through it, preventing your team from using it at all. Besides, obviously, most likely dying since you placed it too far forward. If you place it too far in the back, however, your team will feel conflicted. Either they stay in it to benefit from its effects, not pushing up and taking space, or they want to push up aggressively and chase after the enemies, but leave your ultimate behind. This is one of the reasons why Kiriko does so well in stacked team compositions that can play at closer range. Her ultimate isn't super valuable if you have a Widow and Pharah spamming from a distance. With a Cassidy and a Reaper on the other hand, Kitsune Rush can reach its full potential. Ideally, you want to place it in what's called no man's land, which refers to the uncontrolled space between both teams' front lines. This way, it's forward enough so that your team can benefit from it as they push into the enemies, but it's not so far forward that the enemies can easily counter it by pushing past it. Placing it too far in the back is going to be a crucial mistake to avoid if you want to master Kiriko. Primary win conditions and how to position as Kiriko. Alright, and now that we know her kit's strengths and weaknesses, how do we actually win games as Kiriko? Overwatch, generally speaking, has 3 types of win conditions: pick-based, ult-based, or pressure-based. Pick-based means the character wins games by creating numbers advantages through picking off enemies before the fight even starts. Pressure-based characters win games by applying significant amounts of frontline pressure and overwhelming the enemy supports with so much damage that it becomes mathematically impossible for them to keep up with healing. And ult-based characters win games by farming their ultimates as quickly as possible and then immediately finding opportunities to use their ultimate to win games. Characters can usually pursue 1 or 2 of these playstyles. Ana, for example, can win through pressure with her anti-nade, or her ultimate if her team synergizes with it. Kiriko, on the other hand, is more straightforward. Her kit on its own doesn't apply much pressure, nor do her kunai deal enough damage to consistently get picks on her own. Most of her power budget went into her incredibly strong ultimate, making it her primary win condition. So how do we win as Kiriko? Position with your frontline, utilizing the space they create to get as close as possible to the enemy team. This allows you to more easily spam kunai into the heads of the enemy frontline. If the enemy tank allows you to continuously headshot them, you'll be able to charge your ult at a very fast pace. If you fail to land those headshots, however, or position too passively, you'll fall behind and you won't have enough ultimates available during the game to actually win. While you are farming your ultimate, use your Protection Suzu to prevent your tank from having to give up space and only heal them when absolutely necessary or you don't have a clear shot with your kunai. If you feel threatened, use your Swift Step on someone in the backline to recover and stabilize using your Protection Suzu as necessary, and once the ability comes off cooldown, rejoin your frontline. Once you finally have your ultimate, look for opportunities to make a tempo play with it. Wait for your team to gain some sort of advantage, for the enemy team to be under significant pressure, and then use your Kitsune Rush to engage with your team, overwhelming the enemy team through sheer force. How difficult is Kiriko? In this final part of the guide, I'd like to quickly rate Kiriko's difficulty based on a variety of categories. This should help you decide whether Kiriko is a good fit for you. Mechanics, 4 stars. While not as difficult mechanically as Hanzo or Zenyatta, her reliance on kunai headshots to form her primary win condition Kitsune Rush means that poor mechanics get severely punished as Kiriko. Situational awareness, 5 stars. Her Protection Suzu requires you to react very quickly to opportunities presenting themselves. If someone gets naded by Ana, being even a second too late with your Suzu can lose you the game. On top of that, you have to be aware of your backline so you can Swift Step out of danger when necessary. Experience, 4 stars. While she doesn't require as much game experience as a character like Echo or Sombra, whose kits interact strongly with those of other characters, having a feel for dangerous abilities to Suzu, as well as opportunities to go for a tempo play with her Kitsune Rush, is quite difficult, especially for newer players. Confidence. 5 stars. Kiriko is played very aggressively, and you are expected to put yourself into dangerous positions regularly. If you lack confidence, flinch after taking the slightest amount of damage, or just prefer standing further back, Kiriko will feel very unintuitive. One-trick ability. 1 star. Kiriko is not particularly one-trickable. Certain team compositions will struggle to gain value out of her ultimate. Her healing output is fairly low, which can leave certain team comps feel starved for sustain, and her proactive kit can feel underwhelming in more passive, defense-oriented positions. Adding a character like Ana, for example, to your hero pool can be very useful as a Kiriko main. And there we go, my complete in-depth guide for Kiriko. If you enjoyed this guide and want to learn more about Overwatch 2, subscribe to this channel and leave a like or a comment, or both. If you are interested in improving even faster, check out my coaching services on ioStux.com, or head over to my Discord server to ask me questions in my #AskStuxAnything channel. My name is ioStux, and I'd like to thank you for learning.